Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone.
This is Verdal Laga, in English purslane, and this is Calitas, in English lamb's quarter or wild spinach. No insects attack them, and these are the two most nutritious plants on earth. Michael Pollan, in his book In Defense of Food, An Eater's Manifesto, said these are the two most nutritious plants on earth. I have loads of them in my garden. And sometimes I put Calitas in my smoothies that have about 15 ingredients. And often I put purslane or verdolaga in my smoothies. I eat 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 smoothies a day. Very, very nutritious. If any of you see me walking or you have my phone number and you want some from my garden, I have plenty to share. Verdolaga and Calitas. Jose, I met you summer 1991 at the Spence Hot Springs in Jemez. Dark, handsome, bisexual, 23 years old, from Mexico. I had sex more times with you than any other man in my life. 76 times. I kept track. I was in love with you, Jose. You told me you wanted to marry a woman and leave this life behind, but still, you came back many times. Once you brought a girlfriend to my home. I had photos of naked men on the wall. I wonder if you were wanting to tell her, by bringing her to my home and I having naked male photos on my wall, that you were wanting to tell her that you were bisexual. I don't know if that was your intention. You will always have a special place in my heart. You had a daughter, but I never met any of your family who had moved to Albuquerque from Mexico. You were always respectful to me. You never came there drunk. You never came and were abusive to me. Sadly, Jose, you got involved with drugs. You had your U.S. green card taken away. You were locked up and later deported to Mexico. I dedicate today's program to dear Jose. And when Jose was a kid, his father beat him. And this is my poem for Jose. A healing pleasure. For the man whose dad beat his ass when he was a boy. To have his ass kicked, not kicked, to have his ass kissed, licked, and fucked by me, a man who deeply loves him, is, I hope, a healing baptism of intense pleasure to the abused spot of pain and humiliation inflicted by an angry man many years before. Slow, man-given healing for a cruel, ugly man-made scar. And how greatly I enjoyed kissing, licking, and fucking Jose. From 1865 to 1950, for 85 years, more than 6,500 black men, women, and children, more than 6,500 black men, women, and children, and probably many more, were murdered by white mobs in the United States. Most of those black people murdered by white mobs had committed no crime. The black man, Luther Holbert, was accused, but not convicted, of killing the wealthy white plantation owner named James Eastland. Luther Holbert's wife was not accused of anything. A white mob hunted down Luther and his wife through 100 miles of swamps and brambles. Luther Holbert and his wife were cornered by the hunting dogs of the white mob. Luther Holbert and his wife were brought back to the woods near Doddsville, Mississippi, where they had lived. Luther and his wife were tied to a tree. White men cut off the fingers. White men cut off the fingers of Luther and his wife, one by one. The fingers were handed out as souvenirs to the white mob. Over 600 white men, women, and kids there that day. The ears of Luther and his wife were cut off and handed out as souvenirs. White men beat Luther so severely, one of his eyes popped out and hung by a shred. Large corkscrews were put into Luther's legs, his torso, his arms, and pulled out, and then put back in his arms, his legs, his torso. Horrific pain and torture. The white mob burned Luther and his wife alive. And this happened in 1904, many years after the end of the war between the North and the South, 1904. None of the white mob, none, were prosecuted for torturing and murdering Luther and his wife. In photographs of other lynchings of black people by white people, the white killers appear proud of their evil. Dozens, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of white people watched the torture and murder of black people. The whites sipped lemonade and ate baked goods. The whites posed for photos with their kids, smiling, relaxed, as if at a picnic, while the black bodies burned and still smoldered. Did any of those whites later confess their evil and repent? I don't know. Did many of them claim to be Christians, going to church on Sundays? I suppose many did. Did you and I learn about these atrocities in school? Teenagers need parents who welcome personal questions about the parents' lives, the parents' mistakes and lessons, their fears and deepest feelings. Teenagers need parents who are totally open and honest with their teenagers. Teenagers need parents that teenagers can tell anything from their lives, no matter how much the parents do not approve. Teenagers need parents the teenagers can ask any question about family secrets and can talk freely about sex and about death. All the expensive gifts to your children are never a substitute for being totally open, totally honest with your children, and having your children know they can be totally open, totally honest with you. So they need never fear you will stop loving them. All of us, every single one of us, drank our own piss when we were in our mother's wombs. We began drinking our piss in our mother's wombs. 8 to 10 weeks into pregnancy, the developing fetus pisses in the womb. And the fluid surrounding us in the womb is largely our piss. Some adults say, when they hear of me or other people practicing urine therapy, drinking our piss, some adults say, I could never drink my piss. That's disgusting. Well, how little they know. We all began as piss drinkers of our piss in our mother's wombs. In fact, the piss helps to form the lungs of the fetus. I drink a pint of my piss every morning for my health. Eat and live healthy to have healthy piss. Healthy in, healthy out. If you eat a lot of crap, if you're exposed to chemicals on the job, your piss may taste awful and it won't be very healthy. Why would I expect God to hear and answer my desperate prayers when millions of our sisters and brothers, Palestinians in Gaza, millions in the Nazi concentration camps and gas ovens, millions in Vietnam and many wars prayed with no help. No help. It's terrifying for anyone in any religion who strongly believes in God to realize there is no loving, fair parent God to answer our desperate prayers. I was a very sincere young Christian preacher in the 1960s, over 50 years ago, in Virginia and in Illinois. My huge change to being an atheist came slowly since that. In the Vietnam War, the United States used white phosphorus, napalm, chemical agents on the Vietnamese people, men, women, kids, and on their land for almost 10 years. United States sprayed Agent Orange poison, 19 million gallons of that evil poison on over 3,000 villages, causing awful sickness and birth defects in many Vietnamese people and in U.S. soldiers and the children of U.S. soldiers. The poisons were passed on. The U.S. companies Monsanto, Dow, Uniroyal made the deadly poison Agent Orange to sicken and to kill our sisters and brothers in Vietnam. The United States dropped 8 million tons of bombs on Vietnam. 3 times all the bombs dropped by both sides in World War II. The 8 million tons of bombs the U.S. dropped on Vietnam were equal to 640 of the atom bombs the U.S. dropped on Hiroshima. 3 to 5 million people, most of them not soldiers, most of them civilians, 3 to 5 million, the U.S. murdered in Vietnam, plus more in Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. The U.S. government told U.S. soldiers, shoot anything that moves. Has there ever been a nation in the history of the world more vicious? The U.S. government celebrated the high numbers of Vietnamese people murdered by U.S. soldiers. And I strongly compliment many U.S. soldiers, many, who protested the Vietnam War as soldiers and helped to stop that damn war. (9/11, 2001, here in the United States, terrorists murdered almost 3,000 human beings in Washington, D.C. and in New York City. But the United States murdered in the Vietnam War 3 to 5 million people. And 3 to 5 million is 1,000 times or more the number of human beings, terrorists, murdered on 9/11 in the United States. Have you ever heard anyone in the news media point that out? Any preacher, any priest, anybody? The U.S. murdered 1,000 times and more the number of people in the United States murdered on 9/11. I'm so glad I was often naked as an adult in the presence of my mother and my dad. I have photos my mother took of me naked as an adult. I'm so glad my mother was open and curious about my sex with a man. She once told me she wished she could be a mouse in the corner to watch me have sex with a man. I wish she had watched me have sex with a man, but sadly, that never happened. Many people, probably most people, have never been naked as an adult in the presence of their mother and dad. And many people, straight, gay, or bisexual, cannot imagine their mother wanting to watch them have sex. Sadly, many people suffer loads of shame about being seen naked by family and friends, especially as adults. Sadly, many people drink booze to drown their shame, to drown their guilt about affectionate hot sex, unless it is in a marriage between one man and one woman. Sadly, many men and women go to their graves. They die, never free from shame and guilt about being naked and about affectionate hot sex, unless it is marriage between one woman, one man. When voters in Germany chose Hitler, did any of them imagine the hell their nation would cause in World War II and in the concentration camps and the gas ovens? What their nation would cause and suffer. Hitler targeted millions of Jews, gays, gypsies, handicapped people, communists, opponents, to torture and murder them. And Trump targets millions of undocumented immigrants, our sisters and brothers, mostly brown and black, to curse them and deport them, to lie about them. The crime rate of undocumented immigrants is lower than for people born in this United States. Immigrants do many jobs that people born here do not want. Trump threatens to punish us who damn his hate-filled lies and actions. Both Trump and Hitler suffered awful abuse from their fathers. Trump's father taught Trump to worship money, worship power. Trump's father taught Trump to do anything he could get away with, to hog more money, more power, no matter how many people he made suffer. Both Trump and Hitler starved for love. Abused people abuse other people unless and until they heal inside. And sadly, many abused people never heal, especially if millions swallow and cheer their lies and their hate, as happened in Germany and has happened here in the United States, people voting for the dangerous, lying, white, racist dictator, Donald Trump. Hitler said, "What good fortune for those in power that people do not think." Hitler knew most Germans were religious. Millions of U.S. evangelical Christians voted for Trump. Most religious people profess beliefs that have no proof. No proof. No wonder they eat up political bullshit from Hitler and from Trump. For many years, I was a sincere Christian preacher. For a few years, a sincere Christian preacher, but certainly before that and some after that. And for many years, I prayed to, I preached about, I sang solos in churches about God, my imaginary friend. With the help of many people, I slowly woke up. I'm an atheist. And don't get me wrong, I really, really wish we had a fair, loving, all-powerful parent God who helped all people, who begged God desperately for help. But all our wishing cannot make that so. How dangerous for Trump and for all of us that now in this second administration, he has no officials close to him now who have the conscience and the balls to tell him to his face he is dead wrong on many, many things, including his hatred is violence toward our immigrant sisters and brothers and toward the millions of people in Gaza. A young mother in our county jail had killed her 3-year-old son. And she told my woman friend she killed her son because she did not want him to suffer what she has suffered in her life. Four of the 6 men who were in ads years ago for Marlboro cigarettes died of lung disease. 4 out of the 6 of those good-looking Marlboro men died of lung cancer. And when they were being paid big money for advertising damn deadly cigarettes, did any of those 4 Marlboro men who died of lung cancer from cigarettes years later think cigarettes would kill them? Jeffrey Dahmer was a white gay man. Jeffrey Dahmer murdered 19 gay men. 17 of the 19 were black gay men. Jeffrey Dahmer's parents were conservative Christians who strongly opposed sex and romance between men. So the awful war inside Jeffrey Dahmer between his strong attraction for men and his hellish shame and guilt about being gay caused him to murder 19 gay men. Imagine if his parents had not made him feel damned by God for being gay. Jeffrey Dahmer might never have murdered those 19 gay men. How bad will the climate crisis get before most U.S. travelers are ashamed of driving cars thousands of miles, flying in planes thousands of miles for business or just for fun? How long until U.S. long-distance travelers stop bragging, stop boasting about how many states, how many countries they've traveled to? And many of these long-distance travelers would be ashamed of having their homes, their yards filthy and full of crap. But are they proud of poisoning our only home, Mother Earth, with many thousands of miles driven and flown? I have not traveled outside New Mexico since I returned from my dad's funeral in Illinois 31 years ago. And I realize if you have a mother, a father, a very close family member living hundreds of miles away, you want to see them. I realize that. Because when my parents were alive, I spent part of the time in Illinois with them on the farm and part of the time here. Both places were home to me. So I understand if you travel many hundreds of miles to see a very close mother or father or a close family member. But I'm talking about the many, many, many people who travel by car or by plane thousands of miles for business or just to have fun, for pleasure. The black activist Malcolm X said, "The worst crime whites have committed toward blacks is teaching us to hate ourselves for being black." And I say one of the worst crimes many, not all, but many preachers, priests, rabbis, imams, parents, teachers have committed toward us who are gay or lesbian or bisexual is teaching us to reject ourselves, to hate ourselves for whom we are sexually attracted to and in love with. Absolutely no tattoos on my body. Under normal conditions, I would not get any tattoo for $10,000. I say under normal conditions, because if I were actually starving to death, or if I were homeless, freezing to death, who knows what I would do for $10,000. If I were forced against my will by a dictator, as Jews, gays, and other groups were forced under Hitler to be tattooed. But under normal conditions, absolutely no tattoos for me. Now, if someone already has tattoos, their tattoos will not stop me from being their close friend. But I will not pretend to support anyone's tattoos. How many people getting tattoos now will wish 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years from now they had no tattoos? How many people with tattoos will later get the tattoos removed? Very painful and very expensive. But as I said, if someone has tattoos, their tattoos will not stop me from being their close friend. I drink no booze. If you drink booze, how many of your closest loved ones would have to die from booze before you would be ashamed to drink any booze? If you drink booze, how many of your closest loved ones would have their lives and relationships terribly messed up before you would be ashamed to drink any booze? Before you would never want anyone to drink booze because of you and your example to them. I drink no booze. Now, many years ago, I drank some beer, some wine, and a young friend, his last name was Villegas, I forget his first name at the moment, saw me drink a beer at the Latin American Social Club in Sterling, Illinois, where I had many friends. And this young man seemed shocked and disturbed to see me drink a beer. And I had been a sincere Christian preacher in that town. And did his seeing me drink a beer influence him to drink booze? I hope not, but it may have. If I had my life to live over, knowing what I know now, I would have drunk no booze, no beer, no wine, ever. Booze has killed dear friends of mine. Booze has messed up and scarred the lives of dear friends of mine. I drink no booze. My very dear friend, Meme Villegas, in Illinois, dead at 59 from booze. My dear friend Steve Martinez here in Albuquerque, dead at 59 from booze. My friend Leo Villalpando died of cirrhosis of the liver from booze. And I remember when I went to San Ignacio Church in Martinez Town as he lay in his coffin, Leo Villalpando, his belly was swollen up as if he were pregnant. The damn cirrhosis of the liver from booze. I would be ashamed as hell to own a gun. I've never owned a gun. I never planned to own a gun. I hate guns. I'm 79 years old. An 18-year-old, deeply disturbed, terribly abused white man shot and killed my grandparents in bed in 1976 in Illinois. And here in Albuquerque, in the 1970s, a gun was pulled on me. I hate guns. And the tragic killing on the Rust movie set could have been totally prevented if no New Mexico movie, no U.S. movie had any guns at all. Why are millions of viewers addicted to guns and to violence for entertainment? My parents had a miserable marriage. It was very hard on both of them. I wish they had divorced peacefully or had never married in the first place. They might have been good friends. And I'm so glad no gun was ever in our home. I'm so glad my mother, my father were not boozers. Some people wake up in prison having shot their spouse or their best buddy the night before when they were boozing and may not even remember doing it. I drink no booze. A gun in the home is far more likely to kill a family member, a friend, or oneself in suicide than to kill a stranger breaking in. A gun in the home is far more likely to kill a family member, a friend, or oneself in suicide than to kill a stranger breaking in. More than 200,000 people in Guatemala were murdered during the war in the 1970s and 80s. The United States provided weapons, officer training, CIA support to that brutal government of Guatemala. The government of Guatemala destroyed 662 villages, and the U.S. supported it. 662 villages. And many years earlier, in 1954, the United States CIA overthrew the democratically elected president in Guatemala. Why? Because he opposed U.S. corporations stealing his people's labor and resources. It was all about the filthy greed of huge U.S. corporations. In Nicaragua, the U.S. supported the bloody dictator Somoza. President Franklin Roosevelt said, Somoza is a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. More than 50,000 people in Nicaragua were killed in the war to remove Somoza. And many years later, war between the Sandinistas and the U.S.-backed Contras killed 30,000. In El Salvador, civil war killed 75,000. In all three of these nations in Central America, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, U.S. leaders and taxpayers caused a massive river of blood. The U.S. sided with a few filthy rich at the top of those nations who supported U.S. corporations robbing many millions of poor people. The U.S. supported the murder of most of the more than 355,000 killed in those three nations in Central America in the 1970s, 1980s. Did you learn that in school? Do you hear that on TV? The United States has murdered far more people, many millions of people in Central America, Iraq, Afghanistan, Chile, Vietnam, Yugoslavia, Cambodia, Laos, and dozens of nations than Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and ISIS murdered. Sadly, most people in the United States do not know these evil atrocities their federal income tax dollars pay for. And sadly, many people here do not give a damn. Millions in the United States have never called, never written Congress or the President, or participated in a public protest to oppose U.S. mass murder abroad. In the 1970s, U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, a war criminal, told the brutal U.S.-backed dictator Pinochet in Chile that the United States would not demand that Pinochet respect human rights in Chile. Chile had been the oldest democracy in South America, and the U.S. helped to overthrow that democracy, opening the way for the brutal dictator Pinochet. Pinochet tortured, jailed, murdered many thousands of people in Chile. And do you wonder why millions of people all over the world fear and hate this government? As Prophet Martin Luther King Jr. said 58 years ago, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my own government. Prophet Martin Luther King Jr. said that 58 years ago. And sadly, it is still true. The worst place on earth for us humans to live is far better than the best place in our sun's other planets. The light from the sun 93 million miles away from Earth takes 8 minutes to reach us. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. 186,000 miles per second is 60 times 186,000 miles per minute. And 186,000 miles per second is 3,600 times 186,000 miles per hour. And the next closest star after our sun is 4 light years away. The light from that star takes 4 years to reach us, traveling at 186,000 miles per second. And even if that star had a planet with living conditions like Earth, a one-way trip there would take 4 years. A one-way trip there would take 4 years, traveling at 186,000 miles per second. No rocket spaceship travels anywhere near 186,000 miles per hour. 186,000 miles per second is 3,600 times 186,000 miles per hour. So even if a rocket spaceship could travel 186,000 miles per hour, reaching that next closest star's planet would take more than 14,000 years. How can any intelligent, educated space scientist believe we 8 billion with a B, humans can find, travel to, and live well somewhere in space? What delusion! To escape our sick Mother Earth where we have caused the catastrophic climate crisis. For scientists or anyone to swallow this insane fantasy about living somewhere else in space is as damn foolish as believing in a fair, loving parent God. Many educated scientists rightly see through and reject religious make-believe about a fair, loving parent God. But many educated scientists believe the crazy fantasy about space travel and living somewhere else in space. It's utter bullshit. Space is vast, space is lonely, space is cold, and space is mostly dark. Insane fantasies come in many flavors, religious or so-called scientific. The rockets for space travel worsen the Earth's climate crisis. I enjoy living simply, below the U.S. poverty level, to do less damage to our only home, Mother Earth. When Gandhi was asked what worried him most, Gandhi said, the hardness of heart of the educated. The hardness of heart of the educated. And my favorite words from Albert Einstein, more and more, I've come to value charity and love of others above everything else. All our lauded technological progress, our very civilization, is like an axe in the hand of a pathological criminal. I repeat, my favorite words from Albert Einstein, more and more I have come to value charity and love of others above everything else. All our lauded technological progress, our very civilization, is like an axe in the hand of a pathological criminal. Many years ago, in our Illinois farmhouse, where I grew up, where my mother was born in 1907, we had 2 or 3 rooms we could not use because of piles of stuff. And I'm so glad that before my mother died, she and I together got rid of much stuff. We gave away, we threw away, and millions of people in the United States spend many thousands of dollars renting storage lockers, buying sheds for their backyards to store mountains of stuff they do not need and they refuse to get rid of. How sad, how stupid. And those millions of dollars spent to store that stuff could feed many hungry children worldwide. And one of the reasons I enjoy my one rented room home, 9.5 by 12 feet, in my friend's house, where I've lived for 15 years, is one of the reasons I enjoy it. I do not have space to hoard much stuff I do not need. We can set ourselves free from the addiction to hoarding stuff. Holding on to mountains of stuff is a heavy burden. Do I want to curse my friends in charge when I die with their having to get rid of mountains of stuff that I accumulated? Hell no. When I was a teenager on our farm in Illinois, I foolishly wasted many hours, many hours, watching violent television programs. Gunsmoke, Have Gun Will Travel, Wyatt Earp, Wagon Train, Zorro, The Lone Ranger. And this was years before I knew I was gay. Many years before I first had sex with any man at 31 years old in 1976. If I had known I was gay as a teenager, maybe instead of wasting many precious hours polluting and poisoning my mind with evil, violent television programs, I would have preferred giving and receiving affectionate sex with other males. Passionate sex and romance can crowd out addiction to glamorize guns, cruelty, horror. Our very close relatives, the bonobo apes, share over 98% of the genes that we human beings have. Over 98% of the genes. The bonobo apes make love, not war. They settle conflicts with lots of sex, giving each other pleasure instead of pain and cruelty and violence. No bonobo has ever been seen killing another bonobo in the wild or in a zoo. Imagine if that could be said of us human beings. And sadly, many humans are addicted to guns, to bombs, to war. And often the older female bonobos are in charge in their communities. Rape and sexual harassment are rare. Males and females are bisexual. Lots of sex between males and females, between males and males, between females and females. They're very bisexual. Between old and young. Bonobos are the apes that touch each other the most of all apes. When we human beings do not get affectionate touch in hugs or in pleasurable sex, we suffer. And we often make other people suffer. We need to be touched in affection, whether it be in many hugs or in pleasurable sex. Bonobos cooperate. Bonobos share with each other. Bonobos teach us that passion and compassion are the wise way to live. Not grabbing much more stuff than we need. Not grabbing, not hogging more than our fair share. Instead, let us learn from the bonobos to make love, not war, and not greed. Some powerful words from the song that came out years ago, written by Kenny Rogers. The song entitled Tell It All. Tell it all, brothers, before we fall. Tell it all, sisters, before we fall. How much you're holding back on me when you say you're giving all. And in the dungeons of your mind, who you got chained to the wall. Tell it all, brothers and sisters, before we fall. Did you plant your feet on higher ground to avoid life's mud and stone? Did you ever kick a good man when he was down, just to make yourself feel strong? Tell it all, brothers and sisters, before we fall. Tomorrow just might be too late. Now is the time. Now is the time to get your jumbled mind straight and seek a new design. Powerful words from the song Tell It All by Kenny Rogers. I thank Mark, Eddie, Travis, Jonah for helping me with this program. And I warmly invite you to speak to me anytime if you want to, if you see me around town. I treasure heart-to-heart conversations. I love personal questions. I love personal questions. You know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, where fortunately I've never had to go, they have a saying, we are as sick as our secrets. And how true that is. We are as sick as our secrets. We need to live open and honest with everyone. And I aim to do that. I thank you for watching and listening, and to your health, my fresh piss, the water of life.
Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine